have been in a sermon series entitled Reclaiming Christmas. And today we have a passage of Scripture from the Old Testament prophet Isaiah. Would you please hear the word of the Lord from Isaiah 9, verses 2 through 7. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who lived in a land of deep darkness, on them light has shined. You have multiplied the nation, you have increased its joy. They rejoice before you as with joy at the harvest, as people exult when dividing plunder. For the yoke of their burden and the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor, you have broken as on the day of Midian. For all the boots of the tramping warriors and all the garments rolled in blood shall be burned as fuel for the fire. For a child has been born for us, a son given to us. Authority rests upon his shoulders, and he is named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. His authority shall grow continually, and there shall be endless peace for the throne of David and his kingdom. He will establish and uphold it with justice and with righteousness from this time onwards and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. This is the word of God for the people of God. When I was studying at Emory in Atlanta and getting my master's in divinity, there was a PhD student there named Ethan that he and I became friends. And it's really actually very difficult to become a PhD in religion at Emory University because they only open up 2 or 3 slots every year, and sometimes they'll only accept one student that they can find qualified to match all that they're looking for. And so he's a very bright guy, and he was an Old Testament scholar, and his specialty was Ecclesiastes, and he really knew that book of the Bible. I mean, when he gave a lecture to our Old Testament class once on Ecclesiastes, it was probably the best lecture I've ever heard in my entire life. He loved it with a passion. And while Ethan was at Emory getting his PhD, he met this young woman who worked somewhere on the campus, and they quickly fell in love with each other, and she kind of understood his nerdy sensibility and that he, devoted his whole life really to studying this one ancient book of the Bible. And they eventually decided that God had put them together in this world and that they needed to get engaged. And he had not yet met her parents. They lived in Boston, and they were getting ready at Christmas to go meet the parents for the first time, and he was going to ask for her hand in marriage. So they knew it was going to be a little bit of an awkward situation to be meeting them and asking this question all at the same time, getting to know one another. And he, as soon as they got there, just kind of blurted out that he was in love with their daughter and that he wanted to marry her. And the dad just gently kind of said, well, let's go in the den and talk and get to know one another. And they started this conversation. And he said, now, tell me exactly what it is you do, Ethan. And he said, well, I'm a biblical scholar. I'm a doctoral student at Emory University. And he said, okay, I see. And how is it that you're going to be able to buy a home for you and my daughter to live in once you get married? And he said, well, I'm going to study really hard, and God will provide, which is a great Old Testament answer, by the way. And the dad was a little taken aback by this, and he said, now, how are you then going to buy a beautiful engagement ring that my daughter deserves? And he said, well, I'm going to really concentrate on my studies, and I know God will provide. And the dad wasn't very impressed with Ethan's faithfulness in this matter. So he said, well, what about children? I mean, do you plan to have children one day? And he said, yeah, I mean, yes, we'll have kids. I mean, I hope that we have kids in our house. And he said, right, so how are you going to feed them and clothe them? And he said, well, I'm going to study really hard, and God will provide. And on this conversation kind of went. And eventually they were finishing up dinner, and her mother said to her husband, so, honey, tell me, how did the conversation go? And he said, well, not really all that well. He has no job, he has no plans, and he thinks I'm God. You have to wait just a second for some. It's a true story. In Isaiah, we hear that God provides. Hundreds of years before Jesus comes into the world, Isaiah is prophesying about the Son born unto us, the child given to us, God's greatest gift, His greatest provision, His salvation for the whole world, born unto your life, given unto you. And this child will go by several names. And it's in these names of the prophet Isaiah, given to the child who is yet to be born, that we learn so much about who this Jesus is that's coming into the world. Not just that He will save us, but how He will save us. We're taught in these names. One of my favorite Advent or Christmas carols or hymns is actually not even a carol. There are a lot of good ones. They're on the radio all the time. This one is never on the radio, but I love to sing it at Advent time. I will spare you the singing. But it is from George Friedrich Handel's Messiah. And most of the Messiah is not about Advent or Christmas. But there is this one movement entitled in Scene 4, "From darkness comes the light of the world." And there's this repeating chorus of the women and the men and then the violins. And it just kind of cascades out. And it's this beautiful repetition of Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. "And His name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." And as I prepare for Christmas, I always listen to this anthem over and over and over again. My apologies to the rest of the church staff, because I do this in my office. And I love to hear these titles given to Jesus Christ, born unto us. Because I believe God was and is preparing us for Christmas with these Advent words from Isaiah to help us know who is born into your life. Who is it that you celebrate on Christmas morning? If you want to really reclaim the promise and the joy of Christmas, it's to reclaim who Christ truly is for you. Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. He begins with Wonderful Counselor. That is who Christ will be for us. One who will be our advocate, our excellent caregiver, our perfect companion in this life, to help show us a better way, to help give us a new way of thinking and living and doing this life. Someone we can take our burdens to. Our deepest sorrows and worries and struggles can be brought to Jesus Christ. And Christ sees them and He teaches us a way through them. One that will take even our own sin and counsel us into righteousness. One of the amazing stories of Jesus is when He encounters the Samaritan woman at the well. Here's this woman who has this horrible life. She's made all these bad choices, really unhealthy lifestyle, and Jesus sees her and immediately knows her heart. And all the other teachers are condemning her, wanting to throw stones at her, but not Jesus. His teaching is different. It comes with mercy. It comes with forgiveness. He wants to cure the sin-sick soul. He wants to meet her deepest needs and forgive her and show her a new way, a way of life that leads to redemption, that leads to peace. You see, we think of Jesus Christ as the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings, but He tells us He is also our friend, one who will take us by the hand and guide us with His own teaching, with His own wisdom. In Jesus Christ, we encounter the greatest wisdom this world can possibly know. A few weeks ago, this family made an appointment to come and see me. It was a husband and wife, and they sat down with me, And they had something on their mind they'd been wanting to share for a couple of years, actually. And it's with humility I share with you this conversation, truly, because what they said was that the greatest spiritual advice they had ever received came from a sermon series that Levi and I put together 2 years ago now, entitled Trusting in God. And they wanted to share that what they learned from that sermon series changed their life. Now, that's the greatest compliment that a pastor can ever receive, that they were able to proclaim God's truth in some way that actually was transformative. They said that once they became good stewards in their own lives and decided prayerfully that they were going to put their first fruits of their own labors into God and His kingdom and His church, once they were really going to trust in Him, it was amazing how many doors had been opened for their family. How much peace they had come to experience as they worked to align themselves right with God for the first time in their family's life. And they just wanted to say thank you. I had to offer them a correction. It wasn't advice that Levi and I gave them. It was the counsel of Christ. His teachings truly will transform your life for the better. What we gain on Christmas is the birth of the wonderful counselor born unto your life. Hear His words. Recommit as you reclaim Christmas to His teaching. And that's how we find peace, joy, life. Isaiah also tells us that this friend, this counselor, will be the mighty God, the one who will claim victor over all evil in this world. With His mighty hand, He will face all sin, all destruction. He will even face the grave and overcome it with resurrection. That is who our mighty God is. In one of the first stories of Jesus' adult life, He's on the Temple Mount with Satan, the embodiment of evil in this world. And Jesus is hungry, and Satan tempts Him to turn the stone into a loaf of bread. And then he tempts Him to jump off the Temple Mount and not be crushed. He shows him the whole world, and Satan says, "You can be the king of all you purvey." And Jesus overcomes all these temptations, defeating, swallowing up evil in one swoop of victory, teaching us that with Christ all our sin can be canceled and overcome, and we too can face temptation in this world with His mighty hand on our side. He is our God who saves, who takes us out of the mire of sin and death into the light, who removes us from despair and darkness into life and truth, redeems us. That's who He is. It's so interesting that He was born a baby to this unsuspecting, under-resourced couple, poor carpenter, can't even find a place to have their child, and He is our mighty God in human form. That's who that baby was. It was a month or so ago now, we were actually bringing in a family into church membership. They wanted to reaffirm their baptism before they joined the church. And they told us that for about a decade they had not been in the church, and they had been invited to start coming here by some friends, and they were really starting to enjoy being back in church life. And that while they hadn't really had some awful, horrible, sinful existence for the last several years that makes for a dramatic story, they just really had not let Christ be in control of their lives. Have you ever been there? I mean, we all have, right? Where Christ really wasn't the center of their life. They wanted to give God priority in their life again, rebirth their faith commitment. They wanted to reaffirm their baptism as a sign that Christ has come with waters that can heal all of us, redeem all of us, restore all of us. You see, that's who our Christ is. A mighty God. That if we reclaim, we meet the God who's already claimed us and who has a victory over sin and death waiting for you. Unto you, if you are willing, is born your mighty God. So not just our friend and counselor, our mighty God with a hand that will save us, but Isaiah also tells us he is the everlasting Father, because since the beginning of the prophecies, God is trying to help us see that who comes into this world, his Son, is also one with him, the Father. Christ is coming to be our everlasting Father, our nurturer, our sustainer, the one who will continue to provide and take care of us. He came, and against all social and religious norms, he saw one of his children sick on the Sabbath, and he healed him because he was a child of God. And Christ, the everlasting Father, had to heal. You see, a good dad will do anything for his children, but an everlasting dad will do everything for his children, will provide in every way. Jesus fed the disciples. He rebuked them when they needed discipline. He encouraged them in their faith walk. And he celebrated with them around the table. And today he does this with us. He feeds us. He rebukes us. He encourages us in our faith walk, in our discipleship, and he celebrates with us. That's who Christ has come to be. It was last week, I was going to Montgomery the next day, and I was putting Joseph, our 4.5-year-old son, to bed. And he was on his 7th glass of water because it was bedtime, and I was trying to lay there and be, a settling, calming presence with him. We'd already done prayers, we read books, and I was just kind of lying there, and he was begging to go with me the next day. And I said, son, you do not want to be in a car for 7 hours, strapped into your car seat, and then sit through a 4-hour meeting. It's going to be the most boring day ever. You definitely want to go to preschool and stay with mommy instead of do that. And I could see what was going on in his mind, because he thinks that my job is to try to make people laugh, maybe pray with them, and then play on the church playground all the other hours. I mean, I really think that's what he thinks my life is like. And so I said to him as we were lying there, and I was trying to settle him down, I said, Joseph, what do you think Daddy does? I mean, what's my job? And he said, well, you're my dad. Your job is to protect me. Born unto us is the everlasting Father, everlasting protector, everlasting provider, nurturer. And Isaiah tells us the Prince of Peace. And this is absolutely what Christ is. He is the source of our eternal peace. As he gathers his disciples around his Last Supper table, he tells them these words, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. I do not give as the world gives, so do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not let them be afraid. Who is being born again to us on Christmas is the Prince of Peace that gives us something that the world cannot give us. And friends, if I know and have learned anything from being a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ, it is that Christ has a peace for us that cannot be created by human hands. I have witnessed some of the worst tragedies and trials and sufferings and even death that this world can bring into a person's life. And when those people meet those sufferings in peace, I know that is the touch of Jesus Christ. I know that is a gift made of heaven, not of earth. It passes all understanding. And yet, for one who believes, it is real and present, born unto us is our Prince of Peace. He tells them also at the table, everything I have said, all that I have said to you, so that you may have peace. Jesus Christ inaugurated and continues to bring into this world his kingdom, a kingdom that if we live will bring us peace. That's who's coming. That's who we're expecting. Every time we really encounter him in worship, in study, in prayer, in Christian service, we are meeting our wonderful counselor, our mighty God, our everlasting Father, our Prince of Peace. And knowing who Jesus really is and how he saves us is the way we truly can celebrate, have reason to celebrate what was born unto us on Christmas Day. Because Christmas teaches us that Jesus is the wonderful counselor, God's messenger sent into this world to give you the wisdom you need for today, to take all your burdens to him, and for him to take you by the hand as would a friend and show you a better way of life, the best way of life this world's ever known. So when we kneel at the manger, we kneel before our wonderful counselor. And Christmas teaches us that he is the mighty God, that his hand will save us and claim a victory in our lives, that we have no worry of what sin and unrighteousness may do. He will make us at one with God, just as he is one with God. Align us right with God. He and his mighty hand will save us. So at the manger, we kneel before the mighty God. Christmas teaches us that he is the everlasting Father. He will feed us with the fruits of real joy and hope and faithfulness and gentleness. He will care for you. The depths of your heart will be filled with his purpose, and you will know why you exist in him. At the manger, we kneel before our everlasting Father. And Christmas teaches us he is the Prince of Peace, who's come to show us a way that even now you may live, to know hope, to know that death will not be the end of your story, that darkness will not prevail, that peace is for all those who kneel at the manger before the Prince of Peace. Tomorrow night, lots of little children are going to try to go to sleep, restless, excited. They're going to wake up on Christmas morning and run to check the tree, and I can see by the faces it's not just the little children. We're going to rip open these perfectly wrapped presents, hoping for that perfect toy, that gift, whatever it is that might bring a little extra glee or happiness into our life. Full of laughter, we expect and anticipate. The church reminds us to take pause the next few days and to reflect on the true gift, the perfect gift, God's provision for your soul that's been born unto you to save you with great expectation, with true joy. I hope you can reclaim a celebration of your wonderful counselor, mighty God, everlasting Father and Prince of Peace. For we have walked in darkness too long, and unto us the light is born. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.